Hello! Welcome to Essay Nights, the Essay Slayers. My name is Julie and I will be your instructor as we read through Racial and Ethnic Groups Matrix Essay. The article source is embedded in the video description below. Feel free to read along. Please note that you can get a custom, plagiarism-free essay for as little as $10 a page at Essay Nights. The link is in the description. Is this an ethnic or racial group and why? Where did this group originate? How did this group become a part of American culture? What challenges has this group faced in the U.S.? How is this group portrayed today in American society? Have you witnessed any racism or prejudice toward this group? Any additional comments? Native Americans are considered a racial group because of the large population Native Americans came to America from Asia in the last ice age. Native Americans became a part of American culture with the arrival of horses. The increased mobility helped encourage a period of prosperity for Native American groups whose territories were expanding with hunting. Horses became a part of the spiritual, economic and political culture of Native Americans. The biggest challenge for Native Americans is coming through assimilation, both forced and voluntary. The American people and the U.S. government made various efforts to assimilate Native Americans, which included but does not limit federal policies, education, religious acculturation. These physically separated Native Americans from the rest of the United States and imposed non-native forms of housing such as land use, agricultural and hunting methods. Native Americans' relationship with the United States government beginning before the American Revolution with the signing of treaties for trade and friendship between Native Americans tribes and European American colonies. I personally have not witnessed any racism or prejudice towards this group. African Americans are a minority group. However, blacks is the race where African Americans can classify themselves when it comes to race. African Americans were involuntarily captured and transferred from Africa to colonies throughout the Western Hemisphere to become slaves. In recent years, African Americans have started to demand their history, as most people think that American history is just the history of white people. The biggest challenges African Americans face in the U.S. are high out-of-wedlock birth rates, absence of fathers, and the lack of family support for young African Americans. Media in today's society portrays young African Americans as criminals, crime victims and predators. According to the Black Agenda report, it is said that the perception of African Americans and other people of color as inferior to whites is rooted in the nation's legacy of racial hierarchy. I haven't experienced or seen racism towards African Americans, but I do recall when Trayvon Martin was killed. Society blamed the shooting because Trayvon was black. While jurors disagreed, many people still feel injustice was served. Hispanics are considered an ethnic group. Hispanics came from a number of countries including Cuba, Spain, Mexico, and Puerto Rico in addition to other South American countries. A number of obstacles had to be handled by Hispanics in the U.S. In my opinion, the biggest obstacle they had to face is getting a job. Hispanics are typecast as low-level employees, and only a small number of Hispanics are part of upper management in the United States. Hispanics have also been typecast as unskilled workers and troublemakers in the past. They are also considered to be antagonistic and unrefined. As a Hispanic, I have felt prejudice because of the color of my skin. For example, a few weeks ago I was in Des Moines and I felt out of place because of the color of my skin. Majority of Mexican Americans holds religious faith and traditions that are important factors in their everyday life. This is their main difference from other Hispanic groups. Mexicans migrated from Spain and Mexico. They established themselves in the southwestern states of the United States. Employers requested the Mexicans to be brought into the country in 1942 to fill the labor demand. Mexican Americans also have to deal with a number of obstacles such as being considered as second-class citizens and apprehensions on the legality of their immigration. Mexican Americans today are depicted to provide inexpensive labor for occupations that are normally favored by majority of Americans. My parents are Mexican Americans and I have heard stories of where they were discriminated years ago because they were Mexicans in the United States. They worked hard for what they had and yet they felt belittled by Americans. Muslim and Arab Americans Arab and Muslim Americans are very religious and have a good amount of faith. Although these two ethnic groups are typically viewed as one, they have a number of differences. Arab and Muslims come from Middle Eastern countries like Iraq, Morocco, Saudi Arabia, Somalia, and Syria. A number of ethnic groups were influenced by their customs and traditions. They perform a number of work-related functions like managing stores in low-income communities. Arab and Muslim Americans had to deal with a number of obstacles in the U.S. These obstacles range from a prejudice to abhorrence. A good number of people have a negative view of the religion. Arab and Muslim Americans have been depicted by the U.S. media as barbaric and dishonest, especially after 9/11. Americans don't trust Muslims and Arabs because of what they did to us Americans. Although I have not observed any discrimination against this ethnic group, the media demonstrated prejudice against them after 9/11. Asian Americans. The features of Asian Americans demonstrate their difference from other ethnic groups. Asian Americans originally came from the Pacific Islands, China, the Philippines and Asia in general. The Nationality Act of 1965 facilitated the integration of Asians into the American culture. Asian Americans have to deal with a number of obstacles mainly due to the fact that they feel that American society does not accept them, and they are treated as second-class citizens. Asian Americans are known for their excellence in education and technology. They are also successful in their chosen careers. I have not observed any discrimination against this ethnic group. Jewish Americans have a similar culture and religion. A person has the choice of being a Jew. Jewish Americans migrated from a number of countries in Europe including England, Germany and Poland. They also come from the former Soviet Union. Following a decline in the economy in their respective countries in the 1700s, a number of Jews migrated into the U.S. and became integrated into American society. The strengthening of the U.S. economy also contributed to this influx of Jews into the U.S. One obstacle that Jews had to deal with was when they were blamed for the fiscal crisis in the U.S. Presently, Jewish Americans represent the second biggest ethnic group in the United States. I have not observed any discrimination against this ethnic group. Anglo-Americans is a diverse ethnic group that features some differences in their skin color and religion. Anglo-Americans migrated mainly from Germany, Ireland and England. A good number of them arrived in the U.S. sometime in the 1800s. Anglo-Americans have to deal with a number of racial issues in the U.S. since they do not consider themselves as a single race. Other ethnic groups also look down on them as a group. Presently, Anglo-Americans are depicted mainly as a dominant culture in the U.S. They consider the United States as their country and they show that through their actions. This outlook is supported by the media in the U.S. I have not observed any discrimination against this ethnic group. Thank you for taking your time to listen to me. I hope you enjoyed learning about racial and ethnic groups matrix essay as much as I did. Kindly remember that you can get a custom, plagiarism-free essay at A9AYTZ for as little as $10. The link is in the description. See you next time.